So, Trump
has decided to recognize Jerusalem as the official capital of Israel, something the American Congress did in 1995. Every successive president, from Clinton to Obama, promised they'd do, but didn't. And this has kicked off a giant media firestorm. And not just because it was Trump. It's because this hits at the core of the issue centering around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And that is Israel's fundamental right to exist. Baseline existence is what we're talking about. Now, there have been a lot of protests and people have been angry, and I feel like it's really important to listen to the protesters. Don't just look at the angry faces, but listen to where this anger is coming from. So not only do you hear calls to violence, but there have been actual violence as well. There was the vandalism of a kosher butcher shop in Amsterdam, the firebombing of a synagogue in Sweden, and not a word from the Swedish politicians, of course. So the Palestinians have a legitimate narrative. I get it. And if they were saying things like, when you recognize West Jerusalem as Israeli, you should also recognize East Jerusalem as Palestinian. If this was the narrative, there would be a Palestinian state tomorrow. But that's not what they're saying. What they're saying here is Israel's very existence is an abomination. And then you're talking about this hurting the peace process? How do you expect there to be a peace process when you're trying to negotiate with Israel for their right to not exist? Do you really expect the Israelis to agree to dissolve their entire country?
Do ya? Do ya?
It's ridiculous. It's irrational. Now, let's look at Israel's partner in peace. Who is their negotiating partner here? The elected government of the Gaza Strip and now part of the West Bank, Hamas. What do they say about the peace process? Well, that doesn't sound very good, but it's important to know they're not anti-Semitic, they're anti-Zionists. Alrighty then, that's interesting. Interesting take. I'm sure it gets better from there. Now, it's important to note that when we talk about Jerusalem, it is a primarily religious aspect to this conflict. Yes, there's politics involved, but Jerusalem is a deeply religious matter on all sides. It has been the home to the Jewish people for over 3,000 years. It is mentioned over 600 times in our Bible. It is the literal Mecca of the Jewish faith and has been that way for 3,000 years when it was established as the capital by King David. Now, people like to dispute this fact, but there's literal hard evidence of it. There's archaeological evidence, artifacts found, tablets with his name on it, coin, you name it. We have it stratidated, carbon dated. To deny the link between Jerusalem and the Jewish people is the intellectual equivalent of saying dinosaurs aren't real, they were planted there by Satan to turn our kids gay. It's ridiculous. But do you know who denies the existence of a Jewish presence in Jerusalem? The United Nations. UNESCO says there is zero link between Jerusalem and Judaism.
Disappointed!
Now, Jerusalem has some Islamic heritage as well. The third holiest site in Islam, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, is built on top of the Temple Mount where the two temples used to stand. All right? They have claim to it. Now, they might have some fears of what the Israelis do, but it's important to note, the Israelis, although they control the region, no Jews are allowed there. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is administered by Jordan, the Jordanian government, not the Israeli one.
Now, the interesting thing is, when Jordanians were in charge of Jerusalem from 1948 to 1967, they destroyed all the synagogues and they turned them into barns. They kept animals in them. Now, imagine, if you will, if Christians took over Mecca and destroyed all the mosques and they kept pigs in them.
What, are you telling me that Jordan had controlled the West Bank for almost 20 years and forgot to establish a Palestinian state?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Now you might be thinking, hey, the Israelis have all their other holy sites, why is it such a big deal? Well, there's only really two in Judaism. There's the Temple Mount, controlled by Jordan, and then there's Hebron, where the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs is located. This is the tomb of Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebecca, Jacob, and Leah are.
But again, if you ask UNESCO about this, they'll look you dead in the eye and they'll tell you that the tomb of founders of Judaism has nothing to do with Jews and it's a Palestinian historical site.
Now, it'd be one thing if the United Nations was just focused on the religious humiliation of the Jewish people. We could take that. But it's another thing for them to obsess over the destruction of the state entirely. What do we mean? Of the 135 resolutions passed by the UN Security Council, 68 of those have been against Israel, more than half. Which means, according to the United Nations, Israel is more evil than all of these countries combined. It's ridiculous.
So, who's on the Human Rights Council? The countries, the council, the human rights.
These schmucks. Yes. Them. These are the people criticizing the existence of the State of Israel. And this is why it's very important what Donald Trump did, because he actually reignited the peace process. Because if there's going to be legitimate peace, it's only coming through negotiations mediated by the Americans. The Israelis, the Palestinians are the only two countries that should be involved, because no one else in the international community has a moral leg to stand upon.
Now, about all this outrage out there, you see, I grew up in this propaganda. The problem's never been about what Israel has done. In its core, it's always been about the fact that Israel exists. Now, we're not supposed to do the right thing because, I don't know, some countries don't like it, because North Korea says it's not cool, or Al-Qaeda says this means war. Oh, really, bro? I thought we were pals. What happened? Like, I have a rule in life. Whenever North Korea or Al-Qaeda don't like something, that's probably a good thing. And hey, we tried a 1,000-year standoff full of hate. Let's try something new. Maybe something good comes out of it. Yeah?